What if one platform covered everything from idea to market-ready product? A platform teaching all the AI tech and practices needed for successful AI-driven startups.
This is like AI imagination.
We found that the more specific we are.
We used the classifier, we trained the classifier.
I really wanted it to just be more open-ended for the user.
We were experimenting with different chunk sizes.
Having some problems to something.
By blending cutting-edge technologies from industry giants, you can create revolutionary AI products that drive innovation forward.
This was a special hack, it was a battle.
Let the hacking begin.
Hi everyone, I'm Roxana from the Lab Next Accelerator Program, and I am here with Nate, who is also from the Accelerator Program. And we are also joined today with Ariba and with Esha from Navify. So I'll give you a quick overview of our program, and then we can get into our questions and our interview. So Lab Next is a part of the New Native group. So New Native runs the following initiatives. So it's the largest AI developer and hackathon community globally, with over 170,000 people in its community. Lab Next is a global accelerator for top AI teams to take their prototype to the next level. So LabLab.ai, as I mentioned, is a huge community. It runs the largest AI hackathons globally on a weekly basis. And some of the partners include for example, AWS, Amazon Web Services, and Google Cloud, and IBM. In the last 18 months, they had 73 hackathons with over 12,000 teams, and over 2,400 solutions have been presented, spanning 240 countries. And our accelerator program, it aims to become the go-to place for ambitious AI founders that are looking for hands-on support with implementation of AI in their strategies. So some of our partners include the same as LabLab.ai, and in the last 3 months, we finished our first cohort, and we've had about over 300 applications. In this cohort, we had 9 teams from 7 countries and 100 plus mentors. We were very happy to get an NPS score of 9.15 at the end of our first cohort. So we hope to bring that same level of quality and support to our current teams, of which Esha and Ariba are a part. So our second cohort now consists of 13 startups across 6 countries with 90 plus mentors, and we hope to expand our cohorts even more in the coming year. So for today's stream, we have Navify, we have Ariba, and Esha. Their product is a solution that manages B2B sales, and I will let them talk about it a little bit more. So Ariba, do you want to tell us a bit more about Navify?
So I feel like the easiest way to think about it is like this toolkit for sales teams. And it's essentially automating a lot of the backend tasks, and then even enhancing it with AI. One example I can give is a part of the solution that we're working with right now, which is RFP response generation. And in the sales process, one of the first steps is that your customer sends you something called an RFP. And it's like this hundreds of page long document with a bunch of questions and requirements that does the software fulfill this requirement, and does your product have this? And you need to like go into the documents, into thousands of documents, find the right product, find that specific thing, and answer the questions. And this takes a lot of time. In addition to this, you also have to find the relevant people to answer the questions. Sales teams don't have all the know-how about the product, so they need to get somebody from the product team to answer some of the questions. So all of this takes a lot of time, and it reduces the amount of time that sales teams have, number one, in front of their customers, and number two, to actually take on more cases. So that's what we're trying to change. We're trying to bring sales teams more in front of their customers. And that's why we've created right now this RFP response tool that essentially responds to the requirements for you using generative AI and your company's knowledge database. But sort of looking at the broader picture and like further down the pipeline, we're also thinking of adding things like solution document generation, looking at competitor analysis as well, and then hopefully also from the procurement side. So it's not just sales, but it's also procurement as well. Yeah.
That's very ambitious. It's a big project.
Thank you.
What has been sort of the most challenging aspect of incorporating so many different parts to this? So Asha, maybe you can give us a bit of insights on putting together all these different pieces.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's been a challenge. Like, okay, where do we begin? But I think what we're coming to realize is that we need to focus on what it is really like different in our platform. Because, I mean, as we've discussed, like tech is being democratized. So, like, there's always things popping up, and there are a lot of solutions on the market coming because there is an interest in this area. You can call it proposal management. But we need to think what is really different in our platform. And one thing we think is different is, of course, the AI aspect. But more than that, we want to really make it multimodal. That's not something that is completely addressed. Because a lot of the time, sales documentation is quite complex. There's tables, images, text, and we want to really handle that complexity. So I think handling that challenge, it is a big challenge. It's not easy if you know in AI, handling these complex documents, parsing them, extracting everything accurately. So, but we think it's an important challenge to address and also like stand out a bit on the market.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
so I'd say it's not just sort of competitive edge for all of our solutions as a whole, but as Isha was touching upon, it's also about competitive edge of each part of our solution. Because right now, what's usually on the market is like they just have RFP response generation, but they don't have everything. So we need to not just find competitive edges for our entire solution, but also for the specific use cases that our solution is being used in. So that's definitely also a challenge.
So so far, what has been sort of the main use case that you have found Navify applies to?
Right now, is I think what we're working on right now, which is the RFP response generation. Even though we've focused it currently on the telecom industry, I've been working in the finance industry a bit, only interning, but sure, working in the finance industry, and I can see the application there as well. So I definitely think that's one of the things that has extremely wide industries, a lot of industries where it can be used. Maybe it's our strongest use case, but we'll see in the future. We'll see.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks.
Yeah, so I would like to kind of go back in time a little bit. Just before we talked about that you had a startup before, and for anyone who's looking into startups and their success, usually they have tried a startup and tried running a startup before. Would you like to maybe just tell us about your learnings from the first startup you had?
Yeah, of course. So to quickly tell us what was our old idea was we called it Homely. It's basically a platform where you can share experiences, basically. So there's hosts and there's guests, and then the hosts have like different culinary or cultural experiences where they can host anywhere at their house or anywhere. And then it's just a platform that can connect these. It sounds like a great idea, I think, but I think there were two main things. One was I don't think we were super in touch with our customers. Here, we're very much more direct with our customers because we have a family in sales and a network from that. So that makes it much easier to like both develop and validate the idea, but eventually later on to kind of they can be our first customers. And then second as well, I think Sweden as a market maybe was not so open to this idea of letting people into their homes. I think this was a bit hard to to convince them or how. I mean, I'm sure there's a way to convince them. Okay, like you can use your home to make like an experience for other guests, and I'm sure people were interested. But I think Sweden as a market as a whole maybe wasn't the best place to start for this specific idea. Yeah, those were the two main. Very specific.
I think I'd actually add one more. I'd say it was knowing when to pivot your idea. When we originally started Homely, as Isha mentioned, we wanted it to be that you host it in your own home. So it's like anybody can do it. You don't have to have a license for pottery or be a pottery teacher or anybody to teach anybody. It's just your passion. But I think what we quickly realized with that is people just don't have the space. And we didn't really pivot the idea. We went, okay, maybe this isn't the right idea for the market, but I think that also comes in finding the product market fit. So we I think, honestly, being open to pivoting your idea is also very important.
Sure. I think everything you're saying there is really important, and I'm really glad that you get those insights for Navify. So speaking of Navify, how did you come up with it?
I can go. We can both go, but I can say it, sure. We actually watched our father working one day. He works in sales, and we walked in on him working one day, and he told us that he's working on an RFP document. And then we walked in like a couple hours later, and he was still working on the same document, still answering the requirements. And that's kind of where we saw that, oh wow, this is an issue. He spent like 5 hours on just one RFP, and that's taking a lot of his time. He can't focus so much on actually kind of strategizing how do we want to approach this client. He just had to do a bunch of his back-end tasks. So that's kind of where the initial idea came from. And then we saw a bunch of other issues when talking with customers that they're like, oh, this is so irritating and that's so irritating. And that's kind of where the product roadmap and bigger vision came into play.
That makes sense. And I think the best problems to solve are the ones that comes naturally. So that's great. And you were talking about your father having those problems. So you two are siblings, right?
Yeah.
How is it to work with your sister? Any immediate thoughts coming to mind?
I mean, I think we're luckily we're 1 year apart only, so we're quite close. So we're lucky in that sense. I also think that we do share many of the same interests, but we're kind of opposite at the same time. So we kind of complement each other. So I think that works in our favor as well. But yeah, but I think it's worked well. So it works well for us so far.
Yeah, but I think it is easier to communicate. I think since you're not so afraid of, oh, what if I break the relationship if I say this, and even though it's irritating you, I feel like it's much easier to communicate, so you can just overcome that much faster. And then also, I'd say easier to manage your time. Like usually when you want to meet a co-founder, you really have to set a time to meet the co-founder. Now it's like any 10 minutes we just have off and we're like, she's not working, I'm not doing my schoolwork, we can just work on the startup. It's not like you have to really set out time. You can just find random time to start working. And then the last thing I think would be, as I even mentioned, I think before to you, Roxana, was that it's very hard to find a co-founder. I think I had one of my entrepreneurial mentors tell me that it's much easier to find a life partner than it is to find a co-founder. And I do agree with that. So I think this method is kind of almost a solution. This way of working is almost a solution to that.
It sounds like it's a really nice setup anyway. It feels like it's comfortable and you can kind of do things at a pace that works for everybody.
Yeah.
But have you met any other teams that have been, I'm not sure how integrated you are with other startups actually in Sweden. Do you know other people who are in your age group and students like you who also have startups?
I definitely know a couple. I wouldn't say necessarily so close. You've kind of met them at networking events and then maybe met them at another event. So it's, but I have a lot of friends who want to open a startup, but not necessarily right now.
And how is it with the school, with having school? So for example, as you say, you're doing a master's program. So, and we were talking about how there's no such thing as balance. It's only juggling priorities. So what is sort of the main, not the main, sorry, what is kind of like a week look like for you? So do you have classes in the morning and then whenever you find time to talk to Ariba, then you do that? Or does Ariba pop in whenever? Whenever she needs to, and you have to show up.
Yeah, I mean, we're always chatting, so there's no boundary there. But I think my university is quite flexible, so I have classes only in the morning or only in the afternoon. So it gives me the rest of the day to work, or the first half or the second half of the day to work on the startup. And then obviously you can work on the startup late at night as well. So
Exactly.
that's not an
Yeah.
issue. And then obviously on the weekend as well. But of course, on the weekend, you need to spend time doing something you enjoy as well. But yeah, and also utilizing breaks I have between classes. But if you're enjoying the work, I think it's fine. So yeah, that's kind of the way my schedule works. But also, I think I try to prioritize. If I know some big assignment is coming up, okay, I'll be like, okay, these next few days are focused on that assignment, and then okay, the days after that, kind of like these sprints, the days after that, I'm going to code this for the platform or whatever. So it's not like I'm doing everything all at the same time. So there's a little bit of prioritization that you do have to do, and kind of like this working in sprints. I think that's worked for me.
Great. And Ariba, what does your typical week look like? Do you also have classes kind of in a flexible way, or does Esha pop in whenever she needs you?
Yeah, I think especially when you're in university, it's not as tight as when you're in high school or before then. It is kind of like you'll have a morning lecture and then you'll have an afternoon lecture. And then a lot of the what's it called, the teamwork, you can sometimes just book it so that it's online. So I think it's good that there's a lot of flexibility, and that might just come because we're in Sweden. But I think there's a lot of flexibility in that manner, so that definitely helps. But yeah, it is usually there's definitely hectic periods when we have a lot to do, and then we also have a tenta period, and then we have a bunch of exams and assignments. So I think there's periods which are tougher, but other than that, I think it's usually the evenings we spend together. I think it's like after 5, we'll say, okay, now it's startup time, or after 7, it's now it's startup time, and just even spending a couple hours every day is honestly enough. You just have to be consistent.
Yeah, I think that's generally amazing advice for anything that you want to achieve, like in life, right? To be consistent and to show up in a way that is like mature and responsible, and you take ownership of your decisions. I think so. That was my last question for you too. I think you are probably like one of the most exciting teams for me to watch. So other than being female founders, also I think your solution is really cool. And to just kind of see how you grow and develop. Plus, just the general dynamic is unique and it's very special. So I'm very curious and excited to see where you go. So, Nace, do you have anything you want to ask the girls?
Maybe it's a little bit more information about Navify. When did you start Navify? When did you like say, we're gonna do this?
Yeah, it's not that long ago. I would say 1 year ago. I think
it's
it's
not the
like
beginning of this year, like in February.
yeah, but I think yeah. I mean, December last year we started thinking of the idea, but I think it was in January this year which we really started like researching, and then over the summer is when we really focused on building some kind of prototype that we could show. And then now we're in the program and like looking to accelerate to MVP.
Cool.
Yeah, and it's still very early stage. 1 year is not that long, but you managed to do a lot in that year, I guess. What would you say are the highlights of this time? From this time?
I definitely say one of them was building the prototype, having that done. That was definitely an achievement. We're like, okay, we have something. And I think it's also that we were actually able to do it because I know, I guess you understand a bit of the dynamics of the team, but Isha is like the tech lead. So she's the one with the AI experience, and then I'm more of the business lead. So even I tried to help with the startup. I mean, now you have ChatGPT, so you can code. So yeah, I was definitely helping it there as well. But it was actually still surprising that with not little knowledge, but we're not as experienced in developing apps, we're still able to develop a prototype. So I definitely think that was definitely one of the highlights. Do you have any more, Isha? Probably entering this accelerate program. It was one of our goals.
No, yeah, no, we were excited to be part of the accelerator program. But also like starting to demo for customers, I think that was also really fun and interesting experience. Something you learn from each one. You get feedback on each one, and then you improve your what you have, your platform or prototype. So that's quite interesting as well.
Nice. And I was thinking for our audience and potential future startup founders, what would be your main tip to those people?
I think much like what Roxana even caught on to before, you have to start. You have to sort of do it, and you have to like put the hours into, because the thing is, a lot of the times when you're at the beginning of your startup journey, it feels like you're doing so much but getting nowhere. And the thing is, you need to pass that to get somewhere. And even a lot of the times, the work you have to do a lot of boring work to get to the fun bit. Maybe if that's pitching an event for you, you have to do a lot of work to get there. So I think it's definitely patience. It takes a lot of time. You just have to show up, keep going. Yeah, the same thing that a failure isn't a failure if you learn from it. Isha, advice?
Well, I can just add on to that. I think the uncertainty remains. So I think you need to be okay with that. Like, even if you achieve something, there'll still be like this uncertainty. Okay, am I doing the right thing, or should we be doing it like this? And just being comfortable with that. I think it's not a sign that you're doing it wrong. It just means like it's not something bad. It's just I think that feeling is just how it is at an early stage startup, and it remains. So I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily.
Yeah. I think that's pretty spot on. Good tips. And yes, in a startup, you do not want to be comfortable. If you're comfortable, you're probably not doing everything right.
Yeah.
Or as much as you can. Cool. Okay, so we can wrap it up. So thank you so much for joining us today, Ariba and Isha. It has been a great chat. And well, now in Stockholm, we are at that time where 4:30 is already, you can basically say have a good night. So it's so dark. Yeah, so it's been great chatting with you. Then
Likewise.
we will
Thank
we will
you so
see you
much.
in the events this week. CEO Roundtable, CTO Roundtable.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.
Bye.